Hello, James. Hello, George. Always a delight to hear you talking.
Thank you.
As you know. George, I'm Jewish. And last year, during the Israel-Gaza conflict, it seemed that London Jews were exposed to a lot of anti-Semitism. If that were to arise again, what protection would you afford the London Jews, seeing that a lot of them are also black cab drivers?
I wasn't expecting that segue at the end, but it's a valid point. It's a valid point that you make. I'll go a little further, Johnny, with your permission. George, you called as an MP up in Bradford to make the city an Israel-free zone. Will you be doing that in London?
No.
Why not?
Because foreign policy is a matter for the Parliament and the government, and the London Mayor is not the Pope or the President or the Foreign Secretary. So, no.
Nor is the MP for Bradford West.
But he's a member of Parliament, which
not
is
of government.
No, but he's a member of Parliament. He's entitled to fight for a government line.
So you would make it?
Look, I'm not going to... No, the answer's clear. I'm not going to try and call for London to be an Israel-free zone, but neither am I resiling from my views, which are shared by millions in London, that the treatment of the Palestinian people over many decades, but last summer in Gaza in particular, or most recently, was savage, was almost unbelievable, and the attitude of the British government and most of the British media towards it was reprehensible. But this has nothing whatsoever to do with an attitude towards Jews or Jewishness. Actually, I think at least 2/5 of my closest circle are themselves Jews, and they have exactly the same attitude to the Palestine question as me. So this has nothing to do with Jews, nothing to do with anti-Semitism, against which I have stood all of my life, as I've stood against all kinds of racism. And anti-Semitism is just a form of racism, though the most virulent, the most deadly in our history.
And as you know, to try to separate support for Israel from Jewishness is in the hearts and minds of many of Israel's supporters rather harder to do than you've just acknowledged. So what will you say to or say for Londoners who believe, for perfectly understandable religious, historical, cultural reasons, that Israel is justified in doing almost anything she wants to protect her borders or to protect her future? What would you say to Londoners who subscribe to that school of thought? Because you're a million miles apart.
That they are wrong, and that the notion, my country, right or wrong, is preposterous in any case, but the notion that somebody else's country, right or wrong, is even more absurd. And most Jews in the world were deeply uneasy about the events in Gaza last summer. Some rallied to the Israel flag, but most did not. And the demonstration that was called in support of Netanyahu last summer was one of the smallest Jewish community demonstrations that London had seen for many a year, and perhaps ever, actually, on the matter of Israel. So look, I'm not fighting this election on Israel-Palestine, but if anybody wants to argue with me about the justice of the Palestinian case, you'll find I'm quite a redoubtable arguer for Palestine.
I'm sure we will, although Johnny alluded also to the fact that for many exponents of anti-Semitism, they don't really care whether you are pro or anti-Israel. They care only that you're Jewish, and that is something that a mayor of London, if there were to be a flare-up in the Middle East again, a mayor of London would bear some responsibility for.
Well, I've supported, for example, the Metropolitan Police protection of Jewish schools and synagogues and other community buildings. On the record, I will support the protection of any religious minority in London against the bigots and the haters. And of course the same will be true of Jews. And the idea that a support for the Palestinian cause in any way conflates with the kind of bigots that are about to try and march, for example, in, I think it's in Hackney. They've certainly been trying in Hackney. Amongst the Hasidic communities there. I'll be there on the streets with the Jewish community, fighting them off if necessary. I hope it doesn't come to that.
Will you be welcome?
Well, whether I'm welcome or not is another matter. My conscience dictates that I stand beside foursquare any minority that's suffering discrimination of any kind.
Johnny, back to you. Sorry, I should have invited you to respond to that. Are you encouraged by what you've heard?
I haven't really heard anything because last year I felt very threatened, and I'm 6'3" and I weigh over 200 pounds. I felt very threatened on the streets, and in fact, my daughter, who at the time was 10 years old and goes to a Jewish school, was taken on an outing to Notting Hill Gate, and the class, the school outing rather, the class was split into 4 or 5 groups of half a dozen each, and on 3 occasions within 1 hour, my 10-year-old daughter was sworn at for being a Jew.
I need to ask, and I may have misunderstood the thrust of your inquiry here, but what's that got to do with George Galloway?
How he would protect Jews as a mayor if there was a flare-up of anti-Semitism in London.
OK. Johnny doesn't feel you've provided an adequate answer. You probably do. Do you want to add anything else?
Just that the words Notting Hill Gate were resonating for me because I was myself quite severely assaulted there last August, and hospitalised by someone wearing an Israel Defence Force military garb who said in court when he was sentenced to 16 months in jail that he did it for Israel. So I'm utterly opposed to violence, whether it is physical or verbal, and verbal violence against a schoolgirl in Notting Hill Gate is certainly outrageous and a little bit surprising, I must say. But the truth is, there are racists attacking all kinds of religious minorities and attacking them in a very serious way. And we must protect all our minorities. My slogan is, a London for all. And that certainly includes London's Jewish communities.
Johnny, I have to go towards the news now. We're already a little late for it. Remember, as I bid farewell to Johnny, it potentially frees up a phone line for you if you've been trying and failing to get through. Judicious use of redial is ordinarily the best way to do it. 0345 6060 973 is the number that you need. George will be with us for another half an hour, so there's time for you to get your question or indeed your point to him before 12 noon. The time now is 11:32.